Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be going over Ignite Warlock. So, through a series of unfortunate events, the past two Warlock builds that I tried were very bad, whether that be bugged or just straight up bad in the other case. So, the first one being Anguish Warlock, which was bugged immensely and caused a lot of pain every single time I tried to play it, even though the build itself was amazing. Then we also had Harvest Warlock, which was simply put insanely mediocre, even slapping on a Leviathan Carver with 2 LP and utilizing Chaos Bolts to bypass the attack speed that Leviathan Carver has, still made Harvest not hit that hard, which made Dread very, very sad. So we moved on from that build as well, but turns out when you try two builds in a row and you invest a very large amount of currency and favor into it by, buying things from the market, you run out of favor very quickly. And all of a sudden, I was just broke. So I had like 1,000,000 gold to my name, and I was like, okay, Dread, you gotta get into the war room here. You gotta think, how are we gonna get ourselves out of this situation? And thankfully, Ignite Warlock was there to save the day. Now, before we talk about the build more in detail, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me, as that helps me out immensely in terms of the algorithm and also shows people that this kind of content is the kind of content you guys want to see more on a regular basis. Thankfully, a lot of people still don't utilize Vessel of Strife, even though it's probably one of the stronger items in Last Epoch currently. But nonetheless, not many people are using Vessel of Strife. That means that we can get our HP regen all the way up to like 1700, like we have it right now, and get a very large amount of ward per second. This is really good, as I was able to snipe a few double exalteds off the market because, like I said, no one's playing regen. It's one of the benefits of Merchant's Guild is if you're playing something that no one else is playing, turns out all of your gear is insanely cheap. Like for instance, this belt that I got, this 3 LP Azrael's Fury, I got the Azrael's Fury for 0 gold. And then I got the Exalt to slam into it, which was a double exalt for 50k gold, even though, it didn't hit double exalted, of course, but it was still good enough. This Malin's Hubris here with 2 LP, it cost me 700k gold to buy, and then I slammed it with a double exalted pair of gloves, and I didn't end up hitting the double exalted, but I hit the health regen that I wanted and some cast speed, which was nice, right? Then we can talk about my chest. My chest was 50k gold to buy, which was insane to me as how good this chest was in the end. Uh, yeah, that was pretty surprising. Cool. And to be honest, I'm very surprised at how cheap all of my gear was. Thankfully, like I said, no one's playing Vessel of Strife. Now, this might not be the case after this video. This might not be the case in the future, but markets are fickle like that, so expect prices to vary, obviously. Uh, it should not be the case in the future, hopefully, that random 3LP items are like this cheap. Hopefully. So yeah, we're utilizing a Vessel of Strife for defense. We're scaling a lot of health regen with the insane synergy that Vessel of Strife has with the Pharaoh's Persistence Rings, right? Those are very cheap as well. I was able to pull up 2 of them. Not only did they give us 18 intelligence, which is a lot of increased damage, a lot of ward retention, they also give us a lot of flat armor, which any ward build loves, and then of course the 18 flat health regen on each of them. Another thing that pushed this build to the limit is the buff to the blessing, the Lagan blessing that gives you health regen. They actually buffed it by giving it 20 flat health regen on top of the 200% increased health regen. We definitely did not need this, but we got it for some reason, so cool. And all of a sudden, vessel builds are getting to like 10k ward with not many, investments, right? Now, let's talk about how the build actually functions in terms of damage. So, the whole concept of the build is built around Hungering Souls. If you don't know, Hungering Souls deals a lot of damage, and for the most part, it's a very good skill. Now, if you go the Ignite route in the upper right and you go with the single skull, you can get a very large amount of damage multipliers. So, like for instance, this node gives you 100% more damage, and then it gives you another 100% more damage. And then you have nodes like this that give you 150% more damage. And you have nodes like this that gives you 100% more damage, and you can kind of see where this is going. So we apply a very big fat ignite with our Hungering Souls. The biggest problem back in the day, and I've played a build like this back in the day, was, we couldn't actually clear maps because we only fire out one skull at once, and turns out that's very poor for clear. But thankfully, Warlock has a bone for us today. And that's going to be the node inside Chthonic Fissure that makes it so that whenever you torment an enemy, ignite spread up to 4 enemies. So if we plop a few skulls into a pack and then put down Chthonic Fissure, those enemies, they get tormented and they spread the big fat juicy ignites from the Hungering Souls all the way through the pack. And then all of a sudden the enemies go from taking no damage to taking 10k ticks, and all of a sudden they're dead. And that's the beautiful thing with all the ignite spread that they've been giving us of late, right? Like the same case was with the electrify smite, right? With the the healing hands. That was pretty good. And now we get to abuse it with this as well. And that has caused this build to actually function properly. I actually ended up sacrificing a very large amount of DPS in the end just to push my ward number higher and higher. Right now, I'm at 1700 health regen, which is about 1,000 ward per second, right? And that's also on top of utilizing something like an apocalypse shield, which gives me an insane amount of armor and block chance, making me very, very tanky in the end game. Even at like 700 corruption, it was like 670 or something like that. I'm at right now. I'm at 680, 690. I actually don't know. I can't remember, but around 700, right? We still can tank things like it's nothing, which is really cool, right? We can sit on top of the Orbis and kind of bully him around. Now, of course, our boss fight still lasts about 2 minutes, but it seems like as though that's the new average for most people, as long as they're not abusing bugs or anything like that. Also, as well, speaking of that, this build is not abusing any bugs. This is a Warlock build that's not abusing any bugs, and I thought that I would provide you guys with a solid Warlock build before I moved on to the next build. And with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. So let's go over it in detail. So let's talk about Hungering Souls first. So Hungering Souls, the tree, we take 1 point travel into Forbidden Pact. We don't really care about the spell damage. 1 point travel to Isolation. This does limit it to only one skull, which is fine for us. We take 1 point travel into Great Soul, which increases the mana cost, but doesn't matter for us. 1 point into Fire Skull, which converts the Possess into Ignite. And also, as well, it makes it so that this node cares about spreading flames instead of possess. Then we take 5 points into Eternal Fire, which is 100% increase Ignite duration, 100% increase fire penetration with Ignite. Sadly, due to the fact that we're an Acolyte, we don't get much access to Ignite duration or Fire Pen with Ignite, meaning that this is a gigantic upgrade in terms of DPS and a very high amount of value coming from one node. Then we take 1 point travel into Grave Bond, which is 15% more damage. 3 points into Unholy Trinity, which is 150% more damage when you have 3 minions, which we'll explain how we do that later. Then 3 points into Inspired Hunger. Eventually, you'd want 5 into this. What's really nice about this is since we're utilizing a Fire Starter's Torch, we are spreading flames enemies, right? Meaning that we actually deal more damage to them with all of our other ignites, which is helpful for clear. 1 point travel into Risen Cemetery. This does nothing. Then eventually 5 points into Descent of Madness once we get more points to Hungering Souls on our helmet, which is 100% more damage. We also take 2 points into Dominion of Undeath. The main reason that we do this is because we want to reduce the mana cost of our Hungering Souls, which allows us to spam it while also spamming all of our other high cost skills at the same time, meaning that we become mana neutral. Now that's pretty much it for Hungering Souls. Then for our Chthonic Fissure here, main nodes we mainly care about Fellfire, which makes it so that we spread ignites. This is really strong. We apply ignites with our Hungering Souls a few times. Then our Chthonic Fissure spreads those around to the entire pack, and all of a sudden we're clearing trash. We obviously like the minus mana cost, the mana refund as well. We also like Spirit Gale for the Spirit Release chance. This makes it so that whenever a tormented enemy dies, we have a chance to shoot out another 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 curse or whatever spirit, right? 5 points in Stygian Current, so we get more, more of them, right? Eventually on your body armor, and you would want more spirit frequency, but that's like late game. 1 point into of Gloom and Flame, so that we get 2 fissures instead of one, which doubles our tormenting, right, with our spirits, which is great because it spreads even faster. So we definitely want this node. 1 point travel into Severed Wards, then 1 point into Singe by Terror. This fire shred isn't that much for specifically our hungering souls because of this gigantic amount of fire pin, but it is very good for utilizing our Chthonic Fissures for clear because our spirits actually apply ignites at a decent efficiency for us, which is great. Then we go up to 4 points into Chronicles of Ruin for the 40% ailment duration. Now you must be wondering, Dread, why are you not running Mantle of Flames? Well, Mantle of Flames is very interesting as it does not interact currently with Malin's Hubris. So, for instance, if we look over at our Ignite chance here, we have 200% Bleed chance, which is converted to Ignite. And we also have 251% Ignite chance. This 200% Bleed chance is not being currently converted into Ignite chance or our Mantle of Flames, which is a little sad. It kind of sucks, but that's fine. But also, as well, because of that fact, we actually realize that if we go over to our passive tree here, look at Warlock, the Ignite, the more damage per Ignite chance, this also doesn't affect our Buyer Bleed chance, even if we have Malin's Hubris. Now, I believe that this should be working. I don't think that I think it should work with Malin's Hubris. I think it's unintended that it's not working with Malin's Hubris, like, for instance, the UI. It's the same thing with all the other conversions in the game, like, for instance, if you convert dodge to armor, you still have dodge chance, stuff like that. I feel like as though my bleed chance should leave here and then go to my ignite chance, and it should work with all of that, but nonetheless, that is specifically why we do not grab, Mantle of Flames. Now, the other skills that we do have Summoned Volatile Zombie, which has an insane amount of utility for us. So it has a few things going for us. The first thing that it has going for us is access to the 20% cast speed from Dark Rituals. We really like that cast speed. It helps out a lot on single target as we don't get too much cast speed due to the fact we're running a shield instead of a catalyst, which is great. We also get the massive 16% kill threshold with the new bosses. Any amount of kill threshold is great as it takes way too long to kill bosses these days. Then we have Mark for Death, which is 25% extra pen, which is cool. And it counts as a curse for the 5% more damage per curse for Warlock's Mastery, which is cool. We also utilize Shepherd of Thralls. This makes it so that we summon 3 zombies per cast, and then we also summon 3 skeleton warriors. These are capped to 3 minions, which means whenever we utilize Summon Volatile Zombie, we always get the Unholy Trinity out, which is great for our damage. Now, just remember, these skeletons are very squishy, so they will die at a moment's notice. So you want to be very tactical when you utilize them and use them after the boss did their big attack, right? Then we grab 5 points in the mana efficiency, of course, then 4 points into Path of Destruction to make their AoE bigger, so they apply Corpse Bane and pull the grave in a bigger area. And that's pretty much it for Summoned Volatile Zombie. Uh, Aura of Decay, all we care about is this node down here called Respite. Respite gives us 200% increased health regen on deactivate. So right now, I currently have it numlocked. If you don't know how the numlock trick works, I would heavily suggest Googling it. There will be plenty of videos, but we essentially numlock our Aura of Decay, which keeps it deactivated, which gets us all the way up to that 1600, 1700 health regen that you saw in the footage, which is great. Now, for the last skill here, we just have Transplant. Transplant, the main usage of it is to apply Bone Curse for another 5% more damage against single target, for the haste, for the bone armor, which is great too. And then we also grab Pale Blood, which gives us missing mana, flat missing mana restored. This is really cool, as this is essentially made it so I do not need a single lick of mana regen on my gear. Sure, my transplant has a longer cooldown, but it also means I don't have to mess with mana regen at all. As long as you're spamming your transplant, you should never be running out of mana, which is very appropriate for this build. It makes it feel much better in monoliths. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now we can talk about the passives. So the passives that we care about mostly, the intelligence for, of course, ward retention. That necrotic res becomes useful later. We get the armor from Bone Aura, this Mania of Mortality for the ward on nearby death. This helps us keep a decent ward amount when we're in monos. 5 points into Dark Rituals for the attack speed and cast speed, of course. 5 points into Unnatural Preservation, which gives us a large amount of ward retention, which is great because we care about ward retention on this build. That's why we're stacking intelligence. For a Lich here, 5 points travel into Apocrypha, although this node's pretty good. 8 points into Serrated Bones because we're converting this into Ignite with Malin's Hubris. Then for Warlock here, we definitely want Cauldron of Blood. We don't actually proc Bleed Overload, but it's a lot of Ignite chance for free for us. 8 points into Chaos Flames for even more Ignite chance, right? 8 points into Soul Stealer. This gives us a decent amount of mana sustain, and this on top of Transplant gives us enough mana to not have to worry about it too much, which is great. Then 5 points into Ward of Malevolence. The reason why we have this is that Ward on Kill on top of the Ward on Kill on our helmet here is actually enough to keep us decently satiated in Monolith Clear. Whenever we kill a big pack, all of a sudden we have a bunch of Ward for free, which is cool, right? Then 3 points travel into Imperishable. Now we care about this because the Ward decay threshold per 1% necrotic res. If you look at our character sheet here, we have 221% necrotic res, which is great. And then we get a decent amount of Ward decay threshold. So I've been messing around with Ward decay threshold, and I will say it is very good for builds like Vessel, where you get a decent amount of ward per second, but you're constantly going down to low amounts of ward. This will increase the amount of ward per second that you're getting because it reduces the ward decay threshold, right? Which is cool. So ward decay threshold is actually useful on vessel builds because of the way it works. Just trust me, it works, which is great. Makes it feel much better. Then 1 point travel into Harrowing Armor, although you'd eventually want 8 points in this for the armor flat. Then 5 points into Dark Protections for less damage per curse on the target. It's just like 6% less damage taken, which is cool. Then 5 points into Wither, which is 8% less damage taken, makes us tankier. 8 points into Infernal Lash, which gives us a very large amount of ignite chance. It also gives us Ignite Overload, which gives us about, I would say, about like 15 to 20% more damage, something like that, which is really cool. We'll take it, right? That 20% more damage is great, especially since we're not a lich. 1 point travel into Encroaching Darkness, so we get Anguish on a single target so that we get the curse on him, right, for the 5% more damage and the less damage taken. 5 points into Fleeting Crone for the haste on kill, so we zoom through monos. 5 points into Accursed Seer. This is really good because this increases the cast speed for our Chthonic Fissure, while also increasing the cast speed for our Hungering Souls, which we need as much cast speed as humanly possible. Now, I do have 1 point into Malefic Body. Eventually, you'd have 10 points so that, you'd have more intelligence. And at this point, you can just move around points around the tree to your liking. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now, let's talk about the gearing, shall we? Actually, before we talk about the gearing, let's talk about our blessings. That's more important. So we're utilizing a Malin's Hubris. This is very good as it allows us to grab a very nice blessing. So here we grab Ignite Chance, right? Since we're Ignite build. Health Regen, this is very important. I wouldn't play Vessel without this node. This node is mandatory to make Vessel feel good to play, which is very important, right? Bleed Chance here, which is converted into Ignite Chance. Then the armor percent here, then the armor flat here. This is not upgraded. This could be double, and that would be great if I went and took the time to do that. Now let's talk about gear, shall we? So for gearing here, we have a helmet here with Necropolis Helm. This base is actually really good. It's so good, in fact, that I decided not to go with any other helmet like a Calamity because of how good the base is. The Ward Decay threshold is great for a Vessel build, and the Ward on Kill is also integral. Intelligence. This could be anything else. It doesn't matter. It could be like bleed on hit, but I decided to have intelligence. You eventually want +4 to Hungering Souls, but we also wanted the exalted health regen per second, and then I had a resistance here. Amulet here. This is our best in slot amulet at double exalted with damage over time, LE damage over time, health regen, a resistance, and then frailty, which is sealed. You want to take like a low tier frailty, seal it, and then all of a sudden bosses don't hit you as hard, which is great. For a weapon here, a 4 LP Firestarter's Torch. That poison on hit could be Fire Pin, but I went with a double exalted tier 6, which was great. That cast speed is integral to making the build feel good. Chest here, Chthonic Fissure levels, which is cool. Gives us damage over time as well. This allows us to grab that Fire Shred node in Chthonic Fissure, which is great. Intelligence, of course. Eventually, you could seal Chthonic Fissure Spirit Frequency, Health Regen, and then Armor percent. The Immortal Regalia is very good because on a vessel build, you're going to be sucking up all of your suffixes. So having that extra all res is nice. Then for the shield here, I kind of missed on this shield. I know I say missed and like it's an insane shield. Don't get me wrong, but I miss the all res and the less damage taken from crits on the suffix. I would have preferred to have that, but we got the block, so who cares? Whatever, it works. This will be used in the future. Double Farabor's persistence. You want to go for really high rolls. This is a very large roll range. They also give us a large amount of ward decay threshold, so make sure to look at those rolls as well. And of course, that necrotic res is turned into ward decay threshold as well, so you can get a lot of value out of Farabor's. Then we go for a 3 LP Azrael's Fury. You want health regen percent, exalted, whatever res you're missing, and then Ellie dot, and then maybe mana regen. So just so you know, if you take this belt, you want to undo your potion button. So you go into the settings here, right? You go into the settings, you click here, you change input keys, and you take out your potion because accidentally clicking your potion would make your mana go poof. And you definitely don't want that in the middle of combat. So take off your potions, guys, for Azrael's Fury. We're using it for the health regen. Screw the other stats. Gloves here, Malin's Hubris. Absolutely perfect Malin's Hubris, cast speed, health regen flat. Since we get a lot of percent health regen from everywhere else, flat health regen is preferred. Boots here, flat health regen, percent movement speed. This is really good boot base for us. Not only does it give us the fire pen, it also gives us a reduced bonus damage from crits, which allows us to take the bleed chance from Reign of Dragons. So that's definitely a lot of extra damage for us, which is cool, right? Then for the Vessel of Strife, I went and rolled it. I bought 2 and I slammed it twice and I got health regen tier 6. Make sure that that roll there, the roll here, the 66% health regen also applies to ward. Make sure it's as high of a roll as possible. Don't get debated. If you have a 40% one, you're essentially at 2/3 of your capacity. So definitely look for a good one. Now we can talk about idols. So Throne of Ambition, of course, the more armor, more fire damage, obvious. Then for our other idols, we grab damage over time while you have overloads and ward retention, which is cool. And then the rest is just resistances. As you can tell, my resistances are borked. I don't have lightning res or cold res, but I was so tanky, it didn't matter, which is cool. Eventually, you want to fix those. If you actually get a bulwark with all res, that would help immensely, which means you can focus more on adorned idols like this. But I wasn't that lucky, or unlucky, lucky, unlucky, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. That's pretty much it for the video. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Bye, guys. Bye.